Hey everybody, this is Brandon Zalinsky, captain of Starchild, one half of Omega Team, and you're listening to the RoboCast.
Hello everyone, my name is Sam Elliott64 and welcome back to the RoboCast, and I have no voice this week.
Pardon? Speak up, Sam.
I'm trying. Well, joining me and assisting me through the podcast
You sound
this week.
far away.
I am far away. I'm in the other room.
I'm still in Bristol.
Yeah.
Used to be an hour. Used to be an hour further away from you. Now we're all good. Now we're back. We're back to where we're supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Joining us this week, as always, are Steve the AmericanKilljoy and WorldofWoodrow, and joining us, the wonderful Brandon, and my former co-commentator, of course, Brandon Zalinsky from Starchild. How you doing, dude?
It's on the CV.
Doing pretty well. Had a blast while I was over there, so I need to make it back over there sometime. That was a fun time.
Absolutely, yeah. Bring Starchild over. We saw a similar Starchild-esque design this weekend at the UK Championships in Bristol, but Starchild would be that extra special little addition. We've seen Wayo travel over from the Netherlands, and we've obviously travelled over to the States for Norwalk Havoc. It's time for the return trip.
Time to bring it back over there. Yeah, I'm planning on bringing. So right now I have no parts left for the Beetle, so I'm planning on rebuilding it for Motorama in February because that event's an absolute blast. And so after that, I'll have all my parts again and be able to bring it places. So maybe next year, we'll see.
Fingers crossed. It'd be awesome to see. But we're not here to talk about Beetle Starchild in its entirety. We're here to talk about Heavyweight Starchild and your run in this week's BattleBots Champions episode. We'll start off with a question from Tenny on Discord, who asks, what was the inspiration for Starchild in its origins? Did Gabriel from Robot Wars have any part in it?
So Gabriel did, and once I kind of figured out what I wanted to do, and I was researching about other robots that were of this type, the initial inspiration was really just sitting and just brainstorming for hours on how to make a spinner that wasn't like other spinners, so it had something kind of different to it. And I was like, well, what if I do one of the things that I came up with, well, not me, but me and my team and a whole bunch of other people, and you've seen it a lot recently now too, is a design that we refer to as Potator, which is just rotator but with 4 wheels. And so essentially like an overcutter / undercutter with forks on the back. And so that's another design that's picked up recently, and because that's kind of like a slightly different way to do a spinner. And so I liked top attacks. I thought they were cool. So I was like, all right, can we do a top attack that doesn't have an actuated arm? And so we're like, all right, fixed arm. We can do some kind of thwacking thing. And then that lent to the big wheels because it means you can clear your opponent as you swing. And then we're like, all right, here we're at something that we can go from, and we went from there. But I ended up watching. I mean, anything that had large wheels and swung, I watched every fight that they had from. So I've certainly seen their fights, and I've seen more recently the Zadkill fights with Monsoon and from a couple of weeks ago, which were pretty awesome to see. So definitely keeping my finger on the pulse of the big wheel robots.
As you should. I think there's a lot of interesting designs going around at the moment. Obviously, we saw how successful Huge were in the last season of BattleBots as well. They've really kind of got to that stage.
We're gonna see 2 or 3 times the amount of bots that have big wheels now. I feel like that's gonna. Well, I mean, if people want to actually take a bite out of that apple, it's quite a daunting task to try to get something like this going.
I had considered for my next Beetle doing big wheels, but I've stepped away from that idea just for now. I might still build it at some point because I think it will be fun. But in
the Beetle, it's totally reasonable and fun to do, right? My Beetle wheels cost $20, so it's not like it's all that. It's not all that bad. Whereas the heavyweight, doing big wheels on a heavyweight is an investment.
Anytime we talk to Jonathan about the cost of his wheels and it's just like no.
It's bad.
Insane.
It's bad. It's no better with us.
Sounds good. Okay, so moving on from that, we have another question from the bot jammer on Discord, and Starchild, the Beetle, Obviously has the theming where, Starchild kiss the star. We got that. But who came up with the sci-fi theme for the heavyweight? Like this, you pulled this creature out of the deep,
Yeah, so we started off with the Kiss theme, right? And that was actually the Starchild was initially named by my girlfriend. I was like, "Hey, I have this robot with this piece that looks like a guitar. What should I name it?" We bounced across a couple of things. We ended up with Starchild. And then when we moved it to heavyweight, I was like, I don't really want to do Kiss theme for the heavyweight because I don't want to wear a leotard on national television and paint my face. I can't do that.
Coward.
Yeah, right. Right. And so we like the name. We're like, all right, how can we find something that fits the name but has a different theme? And what we ended up with was the Starchild skull, which is this relic that was found. I can't remember where it was found, but it had this like oddly deformed head. And there was a theory that it was an alien and it had come down and died on Earth. And this was the skull of this alien. It turned out that I can't remember whether it had some genetic condition, some genetic deformity or what they did, but they found out it was just like an person, right? But the kind of legend continued. And so if you look up the Starchild skull, it's like this big
I got it right here.
Spooky alien stuff. And so we're like, all right, let's kind of roll with that. So the Starchild is going to be an alien. And so we started with, all right, we want some kind of alien type theme. And it also helped that there was no other team at BattleBots that did that kind of theme. So we're like, all right, let's have the robot be the alien. And if the robot's going to be the alien, we'll be the people that have captured the alien. And so that's how we ended up with all of us having the alien movie themed outfits, and then the Omega loader
and the crane.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like the robot, despite not having a season in the win column that we want, the presentation of the robot as we roll it out, I'm still like, this was really cool. I love it. It's really cool.
100%.
I have to borrow the Hacksmith's power loader next year. Drive that thing out, just holding it. It'd be fun. This guy I've never heard of before, Anthony D'Ambrosio, weird name, asks, what do you feel is the ideal temperature for a hot tub? Sincerely, your teammate who is too hungover from a bachelor party to join a podcast.
Sounds like he had a good time. Discount or Aldi Tom Cruise, as he is known. Or I guess Tesco Tom Cruise, if we're on this podcast.
Well, I mean, Aldi's a German company. I'm sure you guys know about it.
We have Aldi. Yeah, we have Aldi.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say.
So, yeah, preferably warmer than what we had. The issue was this year at BattleBots. So for people who don't get the background to that, so we are two teams, right? So we have Ripperoni and Starchild. So we pool all of our money, we pool all of our stipends. And we run as one team, and we pool all our money, pool all our stipends, and get one Airbnb for all of us. And the nice thing about that is that when we do that, we can typically get a nicer place per unit dollar than a smaller place because there's fewer places for big groups and they're booked less. So one of the things that we've found is that a pool and or a hot tub is a great thing to have, especially when you need to relax. It's better than sitting in a hotel room with 9 people from your team and just being like the whole time. So it's wonderful for relaxation. And a lot of places have hot tubs, but they will be like either apprehensive to turn them on or not totally functional. We had to harass.
So chlorinated they'll burn your eyes.
Right. We had to harass our Airbnb owner pretty much every day. Is like turn the hot tub on. At the end, we were putting like tarps over the hot tub so it would heat up better because yeah, exactly. Because it was. I mean, at night it gets chilly, and with the wind, it just sucks all the heat out of it. So we're like, all right, we got to prepare such that the hot tub is hot when we get back to the pits.
So good. It's so good. I feel like this is an oddly appropriate and kind of targeted question considering my current state.
Yes.
Henry Strang, friend of the podcast, on Discord asks, what is your ideal karaoke anthem?
For those who don't know, this is how Sam lost his voice.
It's true. It is.
Yeah.
So that is appropriate, but I will point to this desk toy that my girlfriend and I have been together for 8 years. And on Halloween was our anniversary. And let's see. I don't know if it's going to show up.
No, it doesn't.
Invisible. Hold on. Let me get something solid to put behind it. Oh yes, my work laptop.
Well, there's always you. You're
There
pretty
we
solid.
go. Yeah, but it's going to be hard to see it. So,
Okay.
it's like this little lighted sign. Wow, that still doesn't show. Come on,
Oh,
Such
yeah,
a good
floating head.
Zoom.
go me. This is like 2020 right now. All right, no
Oh, yeah.
virtual background. So it's like this little lighted sign.
Oh,
lovely.
that's
with my
awesome.
favorite song on it, which would be my karaoke anthem all the time, which is "Your Love" by the Outfield.
Oh, lovely.
Very
Got
cool.
there. We got there.
We got there. Took me a couple minutes.
It's all good. That's a really cool. Really cool desk piece though, because it's like
Yeah,
the player on your phone.
yeah,
That's really cool.
It's got a little stand and it lights up and all that fun stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah, all the things you don't know you can find. Anyway, so next one, Ivan Roy on Facebook. I feel like we've treaded these waters before, but I feel like it does need repeating. Maybe we'll see. So people ask, I mean, you brought Starchild around this time, but you had another robot in P1 and P1 Evo. You've just P1 on TV. So they're asking, had P1 come back for World Championship 7, but had Starchild's fight schedule that same year, do you think you would have fared better, or would it have just been, would it have been, similar waters, or, did you feel like you were getting somewhere with P1, or,
I mean,
Talk us
so
through that.
the tough thing with P1 as far as like, are you getting somewhere, right? The question with P1 in as is, like as a lifter, is are you kind of capped on how well you can do? And that's the challenge that we were fighting against. Is are we capped, And there's a lot of things that we could do to it that were minor. It never had magnets. We never ran magnets on it. Like we could have run magnets. I don't know. We wouldn't be where Claw Viper is for speed, but we'd be close with magnets. And so we could be that fast. We could be a lifter. But I think the other thing too is that the producers kind of made it clear to us that it was not like what the vision of the show was in the future. It was like they wanted more dramatic stuff. Like Greg for years with me was like, just make it a little bit more exciting, It's like I always felt that P1 was really exciting, but I understand where he's coming from. So there's that aspect of it. As far as this year, they wouldn't have given us the schedule. If we came back with P1 as a lifter, they wouldn't have given us the schedule. But if you're looking at it, Gigabyte, I think is a really, I wouldn't say easy, but a really good opponent for P1 because it's a wedge and you just push into it, so that's kind of what it's for. Mammoth would have been funky. We almost actually grudged Mammoth at the end of the 2021 season, so that'd be kind of funny. I think that'd be a fun fight to watch. Huge would have been not a fun fight to watch. I think that would have just been us loading up on top in front armor and seeing if we can control him around the box and break his weapon. But he was so dominant and so powerful this year. Breaking the weapon would have been really challenging. So we don't really have much to control a robot like that. I have considered for P1 like a big plow thing to control a large wheel robot, but we didn't build it. Maybe we would have built it if we built P1. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it probably would have won more fights just because of the matchups. But like I said, they wouldn't have given us that schedule. If we brought P1, they would have, especially coming off of a top 16 season, they would have given us it would have been like, haha, enjoy like Sablaze and Witch Doctor and have fun.
Problem with the success is you get punished for it the next season.
Oh yeah.
I reckon we saved the last question for later, Sam.
Yeah, I agree. We'll say that for the end of the podcast. In the meantime, we'll go on with the episode itself. If you haven't seen it, click off now. Come back later. It's a great episode. I think easily the best of this kind of mini run of champions.
100% agree. I am horrifically biased as it is a pool of basically all of my favourite robots. I was saying, if you swap out Gruff with Blip, you've made my day. That's all of them. You've won. Thank you.
The Gruff disrespect is unreal.
I know.
I mean,
That's okay.
it had a decent showing today, but it's not one of my favourites.
No,
Gruff is so funny. Like Gruff has this like air. I think people file Gruff under like with Gigabyte and Tombstone and such as like, oh, it's kind of like an older robot. It's like, oh, whatever. But and all of those robots have updated, even though they look the same. People don't realize how much different they are internally from what they used to be. So it's like, I think that's a bit unfair in general. But Gruff is extremely funny because the robot is running like stupid amounts of magnet. They're running like 400 pounds of magnet or something silly. It's adjustable strength. They're running brushed and brushless drive in order to get low speed control. It's a very, very funny robot inside.
They have their own alloy of steel.
Yeah, I think people just look at it and go, "Oh, steel box," and like, "Ooh, flames," but there's so much more to it than that.
It is very sophisticated, and
it's wild.
We'll talk about Gruff a little bit later, but we'll start with, well, you kind of mentioned them already, Claw Viper, and they take on Shatter in already a great fight. There was some great hits from Shatter. Like the fact that Eric was able to snipe
good connections
over, like, so many times, he was able to like hit it. And Claw Viper's not a slow target.
No. I mean the pull surprise worked really, really well. Lighter weight, better to swing for a while anyway. They obviously had the issues later in the fight where the X stopped swinging, but while they were swinging, they were hitting. The accuracy was spot on from Shatter. It's the best we've seen all season.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. And obviously, we saw a slightly different Claw Viper to normal. The no wraparound armor, all loaded on top to shield themselves from those hits. Obviously, it paid off, I think, in the end. Mm-hmm. But once again, I'll talk about it when we get to Claw Viper's second fight, because obviously they won the fight. There has not been a bad Claw Viper fight this year. Like, it had 6 or 7 fights, every single one. Absolute banger.
Kevin has built a mean machine this year round, and I do... They keep mentioning all the way through the episode, like, oh, this was a mid-tier robot in previous years that has finally stepped up. I don't think that's necessarily true, because this Claw Viper is, I would say, almost as good as last year's one. Mm-hmm. Last year being last season as opposed to last year when they actually...
Season 6.
But it was like the development stage, and then this is the, okay, we're running with it kind of thing. And it was honed and refined, and it worked stupendously well. They didn't quite get the lifts that they wanted in this fight, but I think that's a product of like moving your weight to somewhere else on the robot. And Shatter is a big robot. We've discussed it in the past that it's reasonably boat-esque in a field that is shrinking. Shatter is still quite large. So yeah, I think it was a tough thing for Claw Viper to lift, but they did well. They managed to get him up onto the screws at the end, which was a lasting image, I think, for the judges.
Yeah. I feel like that's a very good analogy for this fight, where like it was like a snake fighting a boat, where it almost seemed like Shatter was kind of lagging behind Claw Viper on reaction. Like it felt like it felt like you had, Claw Viper basically driving around the box like normal, but you had, Shatter driving through mud, where it felt like there was like it no matter how well you drive your robot, and with their, advanced, really cool mechanism style drive that usually gets them into situations that, is advantageous against the bot with 4-wheel drive. But because of the way that Claw Viper sucks itself to the ground with those magnets, it drives so much smoother than any other 4-wheel drive box.
I mean, Shatter,
it's such an advantage.
At the end of last season, Shatter was struggling on the floor, as it was getting more and more messed up, that they just couldn't get all 4 mechanisms down on the floor at all times, and that slowed them up quite a lot, and I think that's still the case in this fight. There was one move I really liked from Shatter in this one, which is where Claw Viper is round the side of Shatter, and Shatter pins them using that mechanism drive going sideways, holding him against the wall on their side, which I was just like, yeah, this is not a normal fighting scenario, but I enjoy it nonetheless.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My goodness, my voice.
I feel like Kevin still, even with the idiot strap on the front of this robot, having that grip so you can't go all the way over, I still feel like he still has trouble handling the speed of this robot and making sure that he's actually, on Shatter before he lifts that weapon up, because it's just, his bot darts around so quickly, and I mean, it's already hard enough to get Shatter.
Just couldn't find the robot.
Yeah, always seemed to keep grabbing corners and a fork here and a corner there, and it couldn't get a really good like Ribot style grab where it just grabs the full body and then just bosses them to the other side of the arena. It always seemed that it seemed that Shatter was more slippery in a way than other bots it's fought so far this year.
But as Kevin said in the post-match interview, the more he gets to drive this robot, the better he's going to be at it, because
yes.
We saw it at HRL like not too long ago. Did he win the 30s? He did, didn't he?
I think he won. I'm not totally sure, but I think he did.
He did. He had a deep run, certainly with the kind of 30-pound version of Claw Viper. So that's very clear that kind of those skills are transferable downwards. And obviously, the more sick time he gets with the little one, it's not exactly the same because obviously Norwalk is a wooden floor, but it's there are skills which you can pick up and kind of attribute to the larger robot.
I mean, realistically speaking, smaller weight is going to move faster, and therefore it's probably reasonably similar. We've been saying about Claw Viper acting like a beetle all season, and the 30-pounder is it's a bit bigger, isn't it?
It is a bit bigger. So Claw Viper going through, Shatter. Last we'll see of them this year, which is a bit of a shame considering how their seasons are. I think only the one win in the end out of the 5-6 fights.
They've had a rough season,
I believe so.
And I think they're going to have to look at what they come back with next year.
How there's a little bit of soul searching.
2020 was a phenomenal season for Shatter, and they need to now move forwards with the times as well and go, right, does this thing need to be smaller? Can we make it smaller? Can we put more energy into the hammer as a result? Can we, look at everything that they can and can't do and bring something, I don't want to say better, because Shatter is still a decent robot. It's had some tough old matchups this year against some robots that you may not have expected against. Like, I'm just thinking back to the Huge fight where you look at perhaps Season 6 Huge versus Shatter. Shatter stands a reasonable chance. Season 7 Huge, unlucky.
Rough go.
Very much so.
Right before we move on to this next bit, where we've had these pre-fight Kenny moments for the series. We have the American odds, the money line, but we don't just have it for this fight, we have it for the entire card. I'm still dubious on the fact that Glitch is a plus 600 for the season they've had. I feel like maybe that's a little bit,
generous,
but
maybe.
Just a touch. I feel like they've taken a massive step back this year. I don't know. I imagine next year, if we see another Glitch, it'll have worked out some of those things where I feel like they were another one that dealt with the floor not being flat. But the favorite in this episode is your boy. Two of our guys, so Hypershock and Monsoon were the two highest possibilities at plus 300, plus 400.
That's wonderful to see as well. Especially for Hypershock, it's kind of expected at this point. For Monsoon to have gone away for a few years and to come back as the second overall hotshot to win this Sin City Slugfest is remarkable, and it's I feel it's warranted, and I'm glad that they've recognised it for it.
I like how there's no minus figures here too, where there's like no bot that's like a clear runaway from this bracket.
Favorite. Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about Fight 2, which is the aforementioned Monsoon taking on Gruff.
My new lock screen wallpaper, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that initial lift by Gruff and Monsoon hitting its face on the floor.
Beautiful lift from Gruff.
Yeah.
Really stylish from them.
And then
exactly what they need to do.
And then
they went,
and then Tom does what he does.
I mean, obviously, Brandon, I don't know how much of an eye you'd have had on these fights. I don't know which order the fights happened in, but obviously you were not only part of the...
I can tell you.
So, obviously, you were... It was seen many times on camera with the Ripperoni team, because obviously you are all under one umbrella. Did you have an eye on this fight thinking, okay, we could end up fighting one of these two as well?
I think this was either right before, like, these all happened in quick succession. I didn't see either of these fights live, or at least I don't recall them. I mean, what'd you say, Jevin?
You won't have done. I'm just looking at the sheet now. So Monsoon Gruff was up first. Claw Viper Shatter was 2 fights after that, and then you were 2 fights after that. And with how they were lining people up backstage, Yeah.
I could tell you precisely where I was. I was either in the battery tent or at the test box when these fights were happening. So I did not see these. I tried to catch as many as I possibly could, but I mean, you just missed some of them.
Mm-hmm.
So this one, I mean, yeah, definitely, right? I think though, at some point we're just like, you gotta fight who is in front of us. And if we had won, we would have gone back and looked at the fight and seen how it had gone and everything. So, I mean, yeah, I think the biggest thing is to focus on the opponent who's in front of you, 100%.
Yeah. Fair. Very fair. In Monsoon's case, eventually bouncing off their weapon, Tom sorts himself
bouncing
out.
off the shelf, and then Gruff
is up the right way as well, which is impressive from Tom.
And then that was it. You know, as soon
He's
as
a different beast in this fight, isn't he?
Yeah.
Mr. Brewster let the animal out.
Well, I think also the Gruff team kind of really, it was really nice to see as well. They included in the episode, they know Tom going up to all of the Gruff team, shaking all their hands before the fight. That was really lovely to see. I know that happens quite a lot, but we don't normally see it.
Very polite, very British.
Of course. Till you get to the arena and then he smashes up your robot. It's as
I know, right? It's like
if you were to look at it thinking
apologizing yesterday at Champs.
Yeah.
You look at it as if Tom's a villain for a second.
Oh, he
goes up to
100%.
someone as a massive heel saying, "Yeah, good luck." So I imagine someone in the world has looked at that in that limelight, like with those goggles on. Not at all. Not at all.
No, he's not like
He's
that.
a stand-up guy.
Mm-hmm. And poor old Gruff gets blown up from the inside out, doesn't it?
It does. It gets absolutely bodied.
It looks like something happens before. It's that big hit on the corner that Monsoon gets, and then that little tippy tap at the end, just that little spark. I feel like that was just timed
so they've got
perfectly.
UHMW base plate, haven't they, Gruff?
It looks like it. Yeah, it looks.
Which, if Monsoon managed to hit something important, get a spark on the inside to hit something important, I don't know.
Well, everything else on that bot is so thick. I mean, you run out of weight for a base plate. I guess I suppose really
it is
tricky.
meant to be impact absorbent as well.
Yeah, I think it's like a half inch at UH. It's not like he just has a Lexan or a saran wrap under the bottom.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it's definitely got some chew to it. But yeah, anything with Monsoon like strength is it's going to chew into that pretty easily. But it's not even that they chewed into that; they chewed into the side, the back right wheel,
they just hit it
something crossed over on the inside, and it turned into a cooker. So
the Gruff Steakhouse is open.
Gruff Steakhouse is very much open. Half price apps.
Can I just say, I really, really like this matchup. Just in terms of theming, the rain versus the fire, which it's very well done. Chef's kiss, love it.
Yeah,
I feel like
the right element won.
Well, how can you have fire underwater? SpongeBob answered these questions for us many years ago.
Or Super Mario,
Exactly.
If that's where at that point you play that game. If that's where you're drawing the line, I feel like there's other things that are a little bit more fantastic in those games. But and SpongeBob too. So whatever.
Right, fight 3.
But this was over very quick.
It was.
It was very quick. I mean,
it was no less enjoyable though.
No, I mean, Brandon, obviously you were, as we saw on screen with the Ripperoni team. Is there still a slight kind of trepidation with Glitch? Because obviously, as much as they've had a bit of a stinker this year, and they really have, like, the weapon still hits hard, and it looked at the start like Glitch was moving very nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so as far as our team too, we didn't do much overlap this year. Like we came out for the last Rip Fight Night fight, and they came out for our last Fight Night fight. And then we realized that because BattleBots is usually very, very strict about like the captain is the captain, and like because I don't know if any of you have heard the story about when Jason Vasquez and Pete Lombardo from Whiplash and Huge respectively switched spots for an intro because they look very similar.
Because they do look similar.
and then they made them refilm the intro because of that. So it's like we've heard stories like that, so we didn't want to be that guy, right? And then we realized that like with Seems Reasonable, with Tantrum and Blip, and with Emulsifier and Shatter, they're all going out. It was like, all right, we're all going out from now on, which is what we wanted to do in the first place. So we all went out for these fights. So that was cool. But as far as your question goes with Glitch, they're still a really strong robot. People give them so much shit. I just don't. Oh, I don't know if I can swear. Sorry
Of
about
course
that.
you can.
Okay,
Swear away. Swear away.
Very good. Okay. Sorry about that. So they've just caught so much shit about their season this year. The robot is still strong. It's really, really tough in that they've made like this super big robot with a rough center of gravity over a non-conventional drivetrain, and you just get hung up on everything. So it's something where it was like, all right. So I was coaching Fred this fight, and my theory with Glitch was, whatever you do, do not drive into the weapon. If you go back and watch Rotator, if you go back and watch
everyone did
robots
it.
That
Everyone did it.
They've driven.
Like Jake Hewitt talking previously about the Hydra fever or whatever.
Hydra hysteria.
That's it, where everyone just goes, oh, let's go for the weapon. Oh no, we're in the air.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And then just panic and
the,
drive into the weapon.
Yeah. Glitch is the king of drunken boxing. It feels like you have them, and then they'll turn around.
Just turn around and be like,
that was the entirety of World Championship 6, where like this bot would just fall ass backwards into victory, and you'd wonder what the hell happened. What happened? How did it do that? But it was so unassuming in that season, where like you really have to respect that weapon, and you really have to respect how unpredictable that drive is. I know they had trouble with it in World Championship 6, and of course, you know that unfortunately, as the season went on and the floor became less and less flat, it became obvious that this was very it was going to be a very rough time for them no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, if they choose to bring it back, like, I mean, the weapon is mean. It's got a ton of bite.
I
mean, yeah, they're gonna need maybe a couple new ones. We'll see. But the whole thing with it is just like, I mean, I think they're a team where it's just adjustments. Like, I don't know. I think I don't know. There's some teams where I just feel bad because they just get absolutely dumped on, and it's like we
talked about Shredded
Glitch a lot,
bit,
and it's like I just think if they did a little bit of CG modification, bring up their ground clearance, or all around the robot just have ground scraping in the front, like make adjustments, and they can be really strong again. They're not that far off.
Yeah, we got two bots that had won. Well, one that had shared Co-Rookie of the Year, and then this one that got it. Should have gotten it, in my opinion. Where it's I mean, this is going to be a knockout, drag out fight no matter what, because of how much energy both of these weapons have. And I like Kyle's dedication to the bit where he had the little pencil mustache. For
I don't think they did a Rookie of the Year this time, did they?
No, I feel like no, but I feel like
that too.
I believe so. Yeah, that's what I mean. It would have been, I feel like that was
they're more emulsifier, but a Ripperoni better. So
during the filming, they announced Rip as like the season 7 Rookie of the Year. I don't know if I'm not supposed to say that. I feel like it's implied. But it was during a filming session, so I don't know.
Like it's implied.
Yeah, I think it was just this thing where it's like they won the engineering bolt too, so they wanted to keep it like even or fair. I don't know. Whatever. They had a great season, so it doesn't really matter all that much.
Absolutely. I mean, they've had a great season. Glitch, of course, has now gone from 7-0 to 7-6.
Yeah.
Rough run of form.
Got a winning record.
Yeah, I know. After all this,
it's the Jameis Winston of BattleBots. It's the only 30 for 30 bot that could ever be. Where like, I don't know, you guys don't watch football. Brandon might know what I'm talking about. Where like the Buccaneers over here, Tampa Bay, we had a quarterback named Jameis Winston, and he's one of the few. I think he's the only quarterback to throw for 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions in a season. Like, just it's always the big home run ball, where it's no matter if anybody's open, he's throwing the ball down there. It doesn't matter.
Somebody's down there somewhere.
Exactly. But yeah, no, it's been quite a turnaround for them, and I feel really bad. They got all their winning out in front, and it didn't follow up in the their remaining season.
Yeah, I mean their schedule this year was a lot tougher as well.
Oh, of course, and it's going to be, for a bot that had such a great season that they did. I feel like that's a victim of their success. We've talked about that endlessly, Jevin, with Hypershock, where like they have these on-off years. Because they do really good, then they do really bad, and their schedule bounces back and forth to kind of compensate for their goodness.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah. The thing I'd like to point out about this fight that they didn't point out on the broadcast, which I wish they did, which is the Rip's weapon, right? So Rip is running a hoop that's a little bit thinner than Uppercut's hoop, but Uppercut's hoop they couldn't even run because it was it was undrivable, right? And in this fight, Fred's driving around Glitch, and Rip is flat.
Yeah.
Yes.
And nobody mentions it just because it looks like a robot driving around. But keep in mind, this weapon is almost
doing that constantly.
This is more a moment of inertia than the uppercut like bar or the fist. Like this has more than that, and it's close to the uppercut hoop, and it's still driving around in circles with no lift.
It's amazing.
Which is ludicrous.
Yeah, it is amazing. Like it was mentioned right at the start of the season, that kind of counter gyro weapon disc at the back, and this is it in full effect. It's working fully operational, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
This is such a strange fight.
Yeah, it's a tough thing about it, right? Because it's like the ideal situation is that the robot looks normal, right? So it's hard to point out because it's like, look, the robot, it's driving.
It's normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is amazing to watch it in action, really, because like it's kind of like when I remember like when Beta first introduced the full magnet hammer, and like it fires the hammer down and there's no recoil. The robot is flat.
It looks so unnatural.
Yeah. It's similar
this
to
is
that.
On par, yeah.
Yeah. Very similar to that.
You're expecting both of these bots too, where I think it's, Glitch has a different way of counteracting that gyro by just having a really wide base, so that you don't step around as much, where your wheels are further out from that center of mass at the center that's spinning at ungodly speed. But I feel like we've talked more about like what the bots look like than the fight, because the fight was over so quick.
It was over very, very quickly.
It was as soon as Fred got around the back of Glitch, it was just over. There was a couple of kissy moments, at the beginning where like weapons are kind of sort of slicing against each other, and then into the corner, and then off comes the plate, and then they were already dead. He gave them an extra hit.
He did ask, at the very least. He was very loud in saying, "Do you want another one?"
Yeah, I mean that's the tough thing, right? Is whether you hit them again.
Of course. Well, it's the end of the tournament, so.
Yeah, and it's one thing too where it's like if the other team is still trying to get their robot moving and it's twitching, then you can hit them again.
You've got to hit them. You've got to hit them.
Absolutely. For the content.
I mean, they physically ask you to after a while.
Yeah.
As we found out,
there's a moment coming up later in the episode with Rip that was definitely for the content, but we'll get there.
We'll get there. Well, obviously Ripperoni goes through. Starchild and Hypershock was the last fight. Brandon.
Oh, Brandon.
Well, but before we say, Brandon, that first exchange where you get a clean shot on top of Hypershock after the season he'd had, how good did that feel?
I mean, it's funny. They cut it bad. Well, I wouldn't say that. I don't want to criticize it. But they cut it. They cut my reaction to it
later.
It was
later, yeah.
So I understand it'd be like that. But yeah, I was pretty stoked to see it get the hit it did. So it was nice. I mean, it was really cool to actually swing over and hit somebody the way that the robot was supposed to work. Didn't do much damage as we wanted it to. So that's and it's good. It's finally good data with respect to the robot hitting something. Like I have a robot. I can hit things in the parking lot, but now we have data on it hitting a robot and what it does, so we can work with that. We can use the footage that was on that to figure out how fast the weapon was going at the time and say, all right, where do we go from here? So
yeah, and there's a really nice shot in this episode where like right before leading up to your fight, you got a fight from, I think it was Penn's Sword, where Starchild is fighting against, I have no idea what they're fighting against, and you get to actually the viewers at home get to actually see what Starchild is supposed to do.
It was funny.
What the 3-pounder can do.
It was Sword. Yeah, it was against Smee. I think that was from the final with Smee. With Smee and Thunderchild, and Smee just immediately pitted Thunderchild, and then I fought with Smee for 3 minutes.
Poor Nate.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's a tough fight to go against a Smee. Like as a wedge, like a rectangle wedge, Smee just kind of dominates those. So
yeah, Smee tends to do that. We've seen plenty of data on that.
Absolutely.
Speaking of data,
well, I mean, the other important thing to note in this fight is the change of driver for Hypershock, because it isn't Will driving, it is his wife Alex.
Also, I'm going to make this and put this in writing. BattleBots, you posted on your Twitter or posted on somewhere that you're going to release the Remars All-Stars event. Please do that. We want to see Alex driving. We want to see this.
Why this is such a big deal?
Right. We want to see this lead up. You know, we want to see what's. I mean, I don't know if they're going to add Will's commentary too, so that would be kind of funny.
So.
I feel like I feel like maybe there may be some friendly jabs, you know, because they're such different style drivers. Where Will is a balls to the wall. You know, the robot
he tries to do fancier things. Like the way that it's described is like Alex is very much more point and shoot, whereas Will wants to do the drifts, wants to get round the side, and like it can.
Alex trusts the forks.
Yes, absolutely.
Alex trusts the in the ground game that they have, and it tends to pay off.
Yeah,
absolutely. In terms of the damage from this fight, Brandon, you know, obviously at the start it wasn't too bad, and there was a little period when Hypershock's weapon stops. At that point, you're kind of thinking, okay, we might have a legitimate chance here, or what was the mindset?
Oh yeah, I mean, so the thing was with this season is we came in with 2 sets of Tegris wheels with 2-layer Tegris, which was the set we had more confidence in. And then we also came with a set of a compressed thermoplastic named Curve, which were thinner and was more layers. And so we didn't have as much confidence in that. Well, unfortunately, during the fight nights, all 4 of our Tegris wheels got destroyed, which, so much money, man.
Right?
Yeah, so all of our Tegris wheels were wrecked. So we're like, all right, we have to run the curve wheels in this fight. And we drove to our square. And I mean, I've driven the 250 a lot. I've driven all these Starchild robots a lot. And it did like this little like parallelogram as it got to the square, and it just felt wrong. I was like, oh no, this is not going to go well. And it's really frustrating because I mean, when you're in the fight, you kind of like black out and you're just focused on the thing. And I hadn't seen a video of this fight before, and watching it now, it's like, dang, if our wheels, it's like these, and essentially so before I go further, the failure mode of them was once the rivets started to fail, the layers started to splay, and they would just bend and shear against each other, and it was like driving in mud. So there was no rigidity once the rivets failed. Whereas the Tegris, if the rivets failed, they still were relatively hard. So that was what ended up with being like doing us in, because the wheels actually didn't take too much visible damage. It's just when they would get to the ground, they would fold over 90 degrees.
Yes.
It was like watching Bambi trying to stand up on ice, where it's like, okay, I've got it. Let's try and move.
And then crunch. Right, yeah, exactly. I figured out that if I had enough wheel speed, I could keep the wheels straight.
Yeah.
So that's what I was trying to do towards the end of the fight. But that was just really disappointing to see, because it was like, it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, you can destructively test these things, but at some point you just kind of got to show up to BattleBots with what you have, and sometimes it is good enough, and sometimes it's not good enough, and these just weren't good enough. So this is something we've been looking into.
You can't just go somewhere and just build a Starchild and then build a pseudo Hypershock and then go to some bunker somewhere and see what would happen. You have to go to BattleBots. It's
unfortunately we do not have infinite money. If we had
exactly
money,
that's another problem.
It would be perfect, but we do not. So yeah, that was the disappointing thing on the damage, is just like watching the fight. It's like, man, if the wheels had just held up like they're supposed to, it would have been a little bit better for us. And yeah, when their weapon went down, we were like, oh, we got a shot now. And then the wheels were just not having it. They beat the snot out of the wheels. Credit to them. They did a great job on that, and we weren't able to get another really good exchange.
Yeah. What does happen at the end of the fight is, I'm going to call it quantum entanglement. One of the layers, or probably several of the layers, get all chewed up into the weapon of Hypershock, and you just become one.
Yeah, they inhaled our wheel really bad at the end. It was not good.
How long did it take to take that apart?
I don't remember. It was a while. I think they cut it. They cut it out. They cut the wheel out. There was essentially, you look at Starchild, it's got like the outer rim, right? This outer rim right here. Like one of these spokes failed, and like this entire outer rim just got inhaled into the wheel like sideways. And so they just cut the wheel section off, pulled Starchild out, and then I don't know whether they took Hypershock's weapon off. I think they were able to, once they do that, just grab the wheel section and yank it out like a pull start on a lawnmower, and it came out.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, dearie me. I mean, I think this fight, I think, was probably one of, if not the best fight you'd had this season.
Yep.
Question from Matt Hedger, also does My Girlfriend Doesn't Like Robots. Great podcast name, and podcast in general.
Yes.
What upgrades have you got planned for Starchild next season, should you be accepted? And they go on to say, which you should be because they love Starchild so much.
Yeah, I think I think as far as getting in, I think we have a decent shot. I think the producers liked the robot. I spoke with Greg after the season, and he was like, "Oh, great season! You did really well." And I was like, "We lost all our fights, man."
I'm glad it looked like that, Greg.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, like, if you look, we look back at it, and I certainly didn't. I certainly was having a pretty rough time while we were there. But we look back at it, and it's like we had a couple of fights of the week, even though we got mulched. We had cool fights. The robot lasted 3 minutes every fight. We're coming for that no knockout streak, Bite Force. But we'll I don't know. The robot's cool. As far as upgrades, we've really, I mean, it's been more than a year now since filming, and we have gone through all kinds of stuff. So we have tested out different weapon sizes, wheel sizes, and smaller weight classes. We've done different ideas. It's my personal opinion that it's not just as far as heavyweight goes, we can't just like take a little bit of weight out here and there, and then all of a sudden it will be 4-0 and win a nut. We need to really figure out conceptually how to make this robot work at 250. Because what works at 3 sometimes works at 250, but what not always. So one concrete thing that I want to do as far as weapon is the weapon just did not have enough beans this year. And that was due to a decision that we made early on, which was our weapon drive was going to be 2 6374 motors. Like that, we were like, all right, this is what we're going to do, because we are extremely familiar with the motor setup. We're extremely familiar with the tuning. It's a lighter weapon drive. Like it's definitely on the light side, but we're like, all right, we can do this. We dynoed our motors. We're like, all right, we can get like an 8-second spin up with this. And we're like, all right, that's acceptable. And then we put it in the box and we're like, that's just not acceptable. We can't have this slow of a spin up. So what I want to do is take the RIP motor, the RIP IPM, and put it into Starchild. So it's going to be a little bit of a weight add. I think when it comes to all the batteries and everything, it's like 2 pounds add, but the RIP IPM is extremely weight efficient. So it's actually not that bad. And we might actually be able to save a bit of weight because Ripperoni needs a lot of cooling because their spinning mass is so high. Since we have a lower spinning mass, we might not need that cooling, which would be really nice. We might actually have basically the same weight as this year's robot with way more weapon power. Thing is that we would hit the ground, we would hit the arena walls, we'd hit everything. We're just bleeding energy out of the spinner into stuff that's not the spinner, or stuff that's not our opponent. So that's a concrete thing. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I'm still stuck on the cooling part where I'm like, because Ripperoni's, you have to use dry ice to cool the darn thing. I just think it would be a cool effect to see like
smoke
dry ice,
pouring
smoke coming out of the nostrils or something like that. To start out, the theming just kind of.
I
would
think it's for dramatic effect.
That would be super cool. Anyway,
cool. Yeah. So it's like, as far as the concept, I think we need to take a good look at the concept and figure something else out. Not that's wildly different, but will be more competitive at 250. And the other challenge too is that these wheels were so unreasonably hard to source and expensive. We want a design that's going to be less reliant on the Tegris than the 2022 robot. So those are kind of what we're looking at. And we, like I said, there's a whiteboard in our Discord that has all of these different ideas that we have, and we've been testing out different ones and looking at all this kind of stuff. So can't say for sure, but it's definitely going to look different, and it'll definitely be really cool still.
Exciting
times on the horizon.
100%. And we're not just saying this because you hear like Starchild is just such a unique and different approach in modern day robot combat, and I think BattleBots have been better for it, so thank you for making it happen.
Kenny certainly loves saying the word thwack, so
exactly. It's such a silly concept in today's kind of 4-wheel drive box meta, but this is designed to stop that, kind of similar to how huge is. So hopefully we get to see it in the future where you get that kind of same run. Really, you get to fight robots that you're designed to fight, because obviously this year you fought huge. You're not really designed to fight that. Mammoth, we know what they can do to big wheel robots. So
BattleBots love going, the big wheel thing should do the thing, or the big robot should fight, and it's like, you're ignoring
the whole point. The whole point.
And it's like I understand why they do. Like, they got what they wanted. Look, they got we got 2 of our 4 Fight Night fights. 2 of them were fights of the week. Like, they got what they wanted, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for us, it was tough because this 2022 is such a tight deadline with respect to the build. Like, Ripperoni has had 3 configurations at the beginning, and basically at the end, it was like their main configuration and then their horizontal one, which wasn't even what they initially wanted to run against horizontals. For us, we only had 1 configuration. There's only 1 Starchild configuration that exists. So it was one of those things where it was like, all right, we are designing to fight small vertical spinners and small drums, small horizontals, that kind of thing. And then we didn't get that, right? And that was a mistake on our end. I don't really regret it, because we showed up with a working robot that we delivered and put on fights. But in the future, we absolutely need to be more prepared to fight robots that are not small vertical spinners, small drums, that kind of thing. So that's on us in the future to be more prepared for that. So we need configurations. We need stuff to, if we get a big robot again, if we get a big control bot or something, we need to be able to fight them.
They've got most of it out of their system now in the matchups kind of thing. There's very few other big robots they can really put you against unless something new turns up. So
yeah, absolutely.
All small 4-wheel drive verts the rest of the way. It's all good.
Yeah, perfect.
There you go.
Absolutely. Moving on from first round, Hypershock, going through. No, but go ahead. But like this fight, oh my lord,
this is honestly fight of this tournament.
Good lord. I'm so mad I didn't get to see Hypershock 2 in person. You know, because the fight I saw was over so quick.
I'm so mad that I'd forgotten that this fight
had already happened.
Well, no, I knew it had already happened. I'm at this point in recording, me and David are really dragging, and I'm not sure a lot of this bracket went in. Certainly, I forgot how good this fight was. When it came on as Fight of the Week, I had yet to rewatch the episode itself. And so I watched it as Fight of the Week, and I was like, oh man, this is a good one. Like, so back and forth.
The grab, that one grab of just carrying Hypershock over. Oh, even Will comments after the fight, like, he goes straight up to Kevin, like, dude, that grab into the shelf. Wowie. I mean, it was just... It's what you love to see, like, you know, these the 2 hyperactive robots. They're so, you know, energetic the way they move. This is what the first fight should have been, and you know, we know that Claw Viper. I mean,
the first fight was still very good.
It was, but like Claw Viper was using like a different. I think they used the older tires that were kind of a bit more worn down, and they were using like a rotated parts, if you like, so kind of like they were a little bit more worn down. This was a as fresh a Claw Viper they could make, because they knew that this was potentially their last fight, whereas they probably knew they were already in the tournament and wanted to save bits in the original fight. But this is just all out action. You know, it was great, wasn't it?
You had the first half of this fight, which is a Kevin Milchevsky driving masterclass, going around and trying to just avoid this such a scary weapon on Hypershock. Does an exceptional job basically just controlling the entirety of the first half of this fight. Yeah, he does take a few licks, because how are you not going to? I've made the hand in a blender analogy before, where, like, I mean, unfortunately, there's going to be some cuts and bruises when you're fighting something as scary as this. And I thought it was going to be difficult too, because he loses the top of his lifting arm very early in this fight. And there's not much there's not as much, you know, grip, you know, to be able to grab Hypershock going through here, but still finds a way to really try to knock Alex off her game, because I feel like the deliberate nature of her driving kind of hurt her in this fight, where like if this was Will possibly driving, it would have been I feel like it would have been crazier, with driving, but with Kevin being able to be more able to keep up with her in this fight. Also, Kenny, not her second fight ever. There's way more fights, and we're going to see them soon, hopefully. I feel like if I say it more, it'll happen faster. So there's just so many good moments in this fight, and it deserved fight of the week. And I feel like, unfortunately for Kevin, Alex finds her spots and then just starts pouring on the hits, and it gets to a point where, toward the end of this fight, this kind of starts to feel like
as though she's not even aiming at times. There are times where she's just like, there's the robot, drive at it.
Yes,
and
just
still
go.
Getting massive connections, claw vipers flying through the air. It's such an impressive feat from Alex to do the big Hypershock thing, to do, as Kenny loves to call it, the Berserker Barrage.
So I'm really stupid and I ran out of space on my PC, so apologies if there's a bit of a weird cut here, but long story short,
Sam's computer just filled with so much porn.
clearly, endless amounts of porn. Hypershock beat Claw Viper in one of the fights of the season. Go watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's now on YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
It's now
I
there.
am interested because they've been doing 2 fights of the week. I wonder what the other one will be. It's not going to be the final this week.
Yeah. Before we move on to, like, I want to comment on the fact that, like, you have the Hypershock groupies, and then you have Kevin at the end there, just for the decision. It just he looks so alone. There's nobody here to pat him on the back and say, "You really did good. You did a great job." It was a unanimous decision too, which it sort of,
it makes sense, but
even if it's unanimous, it doesn't not mean it's close.
Yeah, it doesn't reflect on Kevin favorably.
It means that the judges have done their job correctly.
Yeah. Correct.
Absolutely.
And it may well still have been a reasonable decision in there.
Exactly.
Obviously, damage goes Hypershock. Aggression ends up Hypershock as well, but not all of it. Control probably may lean towards Claw Viper. I don't know, but
tough to say. Fights. Well, our penultimate fight was Ripperoni and Monsoon.
It was right there. It was right there, and then it was on fire, and then it wasn't there anymore.
So something from this fight, so this was where everything started to go downhill, because the sleep went down, the partying went up, and it all just got weird. So the thing that they cut the walkouts for this fight, which is very disappointing, and I want to get this walkout out there because it was possibly my favorite moment of the entire event, and I'm going to change my background to it here so you can see. So essentially, we were like, our walkouts were getting sillier and sillier as the event was going on, and so let's get this. I was trying to type this in. Well, all right, there we go. There we go. Good. All right. So this is from our walkout. I'm going to slink down here so you can see. So, there's so much good here. Number one, Rory Charlesworth wearing a Monsoon shirt during the intro. That is outstanding. Number two, we have a Home Depot bucket labeled Boston Harbor with of which we open up one of the Ripperoni boxes, take a bunch of tea bags out of, and throw it into the bucket. It was wonderful. And then the other thing that they don't even really show on the episode, they only really show Anna, or this fight, is that Anna and Fred are swapped.
Like, yes, they're opposite completely. Because she always has the hat backwards.
Yeah, Anna's wearing Fred's outfit, and Fred is wearing a pizza choker and a backwards hat, and his hair is down. Like, this is wonderful. Why did this get cut?
This is content. Yeah. This is content.
I am so sad. This was so funny. And it got cut. Disappointing.
Release the Brandon cut, Greg. Come on now.
Yeah, right. Anyways, on to the actual fight.
Do you know the story, Brandon, of how me and David, both in the Beetleweight scene in the UK, managed to not notice Rory Charlesworth for 2 weeks at BattleBots? And how one Rory Charlesworth missed me and David for 2 weeks at BattleBots. We just didn't see each other. And we didn't know that he was there, and he didn't know we were there. 2 weeks. It's a long time to not notice
Yeah, which
somebody
is funny,
from the
'cause
same country as you.
Yeah, I was to say, because you saw, like, I remember seeing you at some point, whether, I don't know whether you're in the pits or in the stands and waved high or whatever, but yeah, that's funny.
2 weeks.
The fact that I had to tell you, oh no, he's there.
Two
I know
ships
he's
passing
there.
in the night.
I know
He
he's
was
there.
To be fair, the last time I saw him, he had the bowl cut. So to see him with different haircut, he was fully in disguise. No idea.
Well, that's why you didn't see him then. You were looking for the bowl cut then. That's your excuse.
Well, I wasn't. I wasn't even looking for the bowl cut. I didn't know to look for him.
Yeah, Rory's been involved for a couple of years now. He was supposed to make it out in season 6 or
with P1.
five, yeah, with P1, and it just couldn't happen because of COVID.
I remember him, like he was helping out with Parallax over here for a while, because obviously Luke brought Parallax over, and my team tried definitely once upon a time fought Parallax in Extreme Robots, and Rory was there at the time and was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting connection. And as you're right, he's kind of been there behind the scenes with P1 for a good while now as well. Like,
yeah, Rory's been around forever, which is funny because he's never showed up on the season because it's been 2 COVID seasons in a row. So, yeah, he was finally able to make it out for season 7, which was very funny. He's a great guy, and we'd love to have him. So
he's wonderful. Yeah, completely agree. You mentioned that this is where things started to go wrong as well. The not just for the team, because at this stage, well, Ripperoni's had a stellar season up to this point. It's only lost to Black Dragon.
It's got a lot of fights on it now. This poor machine has had a long run. I'm sure
had that amazing fight with Black Dragon where it eventually just kind of broke and eventually lost. And you can tell it's going to give it tired because, I mean, as you said, it was kind of a rush to get both these, yourselves with Starchild and Ripperoni together in time. And in this fight, there's one massive hit at the start and both robots are just really suffering. And I think Monsoon's suffering slightly less. Because it was still
Monsoon was on fire. I don't know how that's possible.
It recovered and was able to extinguish the flyer, I think, by the looks of it. But
yeah, they spun up fast enough to put it out. I think it was one side of drive went down, which is
correct.
I imagine Rory is fuming about that.
Maybe it wasn't a Vesk. Maybe it wasn't a Vesk. Who knows?
It was a Vesk.
Oh no!
But it wasn't because like Vesk problems. It was because Rip hit Monsoon's front armor so hard that it penned a point about this big and socked the Vesk. Literally just punched the Vesk.
Oh, so that's not his fault.
It wasn't just like, oh, Vesk bad. No, it was actually like penetrated armor and punched.
I thought it was a Vesk. I seem to recall it was a Vesk at the time, having chatted to the team.
Yeah, there's Go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I'm just.
I was saying, I don't know where the picture is, but maybe somebody will put it out at some point. But Monsoon's front got the Rip doinked them pretty good. It was probably one of the better hits that Rip has delivered all season, even though it wasn't quite as dramatic, but it was a really unbelievably good hit.
Yeah, maybe Tim shouldn't have asked. Tim shouldn't have asked if there was chicken on the pizza because they sure found out in a weird way.
What a line. What a line.
The commentary in this fight's actually very, very good. I feel like Chris and Kenny do a very good job kind of keeping an eye on the teams and, making sure. I don't know how much Chris and Kenny do
post-production.
VO replacement, because I know there's definitely some that they do after the fact. Because you can only get so much done, I guess, at the event, and then editors will come back and say, hey, we need this fill here, we need this here. So but yeah, Monsoon does the thing. It's a sin. It's
third time this season it's done it. I mean, it did it.
It's not very becoming of it.
Did it against Black Dragon, did it against Sawblaze, and did it here against Ripperoni as well. To sum up Monsoon's return to BattleBots.
Phenomenal.
Yeah,
I think so, yeah.
The best British robot
in the world.
In the world. It is. It's gone the furthest in all competitions.
Mm-hmm. And, well, it didn't quite get to the final, like Cobalt, British, whatever.
Cobalt was not British in that episode.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Absolutely not. No part of it.
But, Monsoon coming back from the, a couple of seasons away, we kind of mentioned before, like they kind of did iterate whilst they were away. Yeah. The effects have paid off. And good for them, and I hope we see Monsoon again. I'm sure we will do.
I mean, we're already seeing it over here in the UK, absolutely ruining Zadkiel's run.
Poor Zadkiel. Just like
Zadkiel was up there as a top 3 winning machines of
there's only
current
2
time.
active spinners in the UK, and it's just Monsoon and Zadkiel, and Monsoon just keeps battering Zadkiel.
Absolutely
active spinners,
shitting and crying.
I mean, Donald Thump.
Does spin.
Does it?
Yes.
Okay.
He sure does spin a lot of things.
I've watched it hit things.
Okay, fair enough. But Ripperoni does go through to the final.
They survived the rainy day, as Anna puts it, because it was not an easy victory by any stretch.
But how big was the repair job going into the Hypershock fight, Brandon? Because it looked like Ripperoni, it was like, at this point, as I've said, it was starting to suffer.
It was. I thought it was a little bit unfair. They put up. They made it look like we were just like. I mean, we were all tired and exhausted and everything, but they made it look like we were
like on your knees, sort of thing.
Like slaving on our knees to get this robot back together. It was another rebuild. So Rip had an issue this year where when it delivered massive shots, and since it did that every fight, there's a couple of weld seams in the back that kept splitting. And the issue is that in order to re-weld those, you need to take everything out of the robot. So the whole team got really good, and especially here when all of the Starchild people were available to help Rip, it's like you see a lot of the shots in the pits, and it's like me and Spocky and Rory and Amanda and all these people are all both helping with the Rip effort as well. So we had the people, we had the parts. But at the end, it was definitely there was one weapon left, there was one motor left, there was like one chassis left. We had one of everything, but we tore it down to nothing between Monsoon and Hypershock and put it back together, which was a bit of work, but I mean, Anna did a really good job. They actually got video. We actually saw video of Anna welding, which is cool.
Yes.
They usually don't show that, so it was nice to see that. And yeah, no, it was an rebuild, but it wasn't horrific.
It's good to hear.
Yeah.
Now, before we get to the final, Jevon, how split were your loyalties in this fight? Because you have fallen in love with Ripperoni this year.
Mm-hmm.
As have many. But I think you are a big Ripperoni enjoyer. And Hypershock, as you can see, kind of to your right, is your original love interest. So where do your loyalties lie?
I've got both of them here.
Right, okay, so you're staying on the fence.
I am. For this fight, my loyalties were with Hypershock. You know me, it's very difficult for me to root against them. To the point where, even if I think they're going to lose, I will still root for them. This is an episode in which, if Hypershock wins it, I'm over the moon. If Ripperoni wins it, I'm over the moon. If Monsoon wins it, I'm over the moon. Same. You just like going to space for Shatter, for Claw Viper. As I said at the very top of this episode, I love almost all of the robots in this bracket. There's not one I dislike in this bracket. Let me put it that way. I like them all. I love most of them. And so when this final came around, I was sitting on tenterhooks. And I think for me, the most disappointing thing with this final wasn't the fact that Hypershock lost. It wasn't the fact that Ripperoni won, because I was thrilled for them, because they deserved it. I was a little bit gutted that it wasn't as entertaining a fight as I know these two robots definitely can do.
Absolutely.
It was a very... I felt it was
one for the purists,
because there were some big hits early on, and that kind of ruined both of those robots' days.
This is one of those fights that I think BattleBots will put an asterisk next to and say, hey, let's look at this as a future fight for the future season, because I feel like we didn't get exactly the fight that we were looking for as well. I feel like production would mark that and say, hey, let's try this again in the future, because this has the meat and potatoes of a really good fight.
There's one monumental hit from Ripperoni that sends Hypershock into a crazy spiral through the end. It's the most I've ever seen Hypershock gyro in the air. But yeah, that was a huge hit, and at that point you're just like, Hypershock.
This is kind of the consequence of the rule change. Like, they did mention it in the episode, the rule change going into season 7, where any movement is movement. And in the past, this fight would have just been stopped quite early on. But
yes, I really hope that people don't call for a rule change back on it because of this one fight.
Like it's probably the lesser of two evils. Like there's less grey area certainly, but this is also the consequence of that rule change. Now, before we go any further, I've just noticed for video watchers the background change of Brandon's.
Yes.
Which is Ripperoni being carried into battle on P1. It's fantastic.
A wonderful moment, and me and David both went, it's P1!
Like I said, it started to go downhill as far as the everyone was just so exhausted at this point. We're like, what would be funny? Put it on P1.
We applaud it. It was hilarious. We enjoyed it greatly.
So that is very good. We're just like, well, we'll just do this, and then we'll just put P1 in the arena. And then they didn't let us do anything more of goofiness. They're like, just get your stuff and leave, idiots.
I think the other thing that hindered this fight for me is nothing on the teams and nothing on the robots. It's that me and David were, like, if we were dragging in that last one, we were on the floor for this one. We were really quite unwell. Happily not with COVID. We managed to dodge that bullet, but we had really fluey, awful conditions. And we managed to drag ourselves to the top of the stands to hide from the cameras, basically. So we were there to watch the fights and nothing more. We weren't even chanting fight at this point. We had very little voice left.
I feel like if we ever go back, a bunch of us together, we need to learn to pace ourselves, because those first couple filmings,
we really went
2 days,
we went so hard in the first week.
Ourselves.
We were on 3 lozenges a day by day 3, and it was rough. But no, there's, as usual, the little book has little notes, and in this one, it's Jevon is sad, everything is gloomy, want to go home now, which I don't feel is a reflection of the fight at all.
It's not.
It's a reflection of my mental state.
From a Omega team point of view, Brandon, talk us through this fight. I mean, obviously, Hypershock, as you already know from first-hand experience, is a big threat.
Yeah.
Talk us through it.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as this fight goes, the thing that surprised me from the start was I was surprised that they ran the plow. I 100% expected them to run forks. So it's just strange. I was surprised to see that. And so as far as the fight goes, obviously there's only a couple exchanges that are really relevant here. If you look at the one where Rip loses the drive, we've looked at it quite a few times in retrospect. So what we think happened was when we get hit up in the air, but the hit isn't directly on the wheel, and then the wheel kind of lands sideways on the ground, and it's a little bit of a tangential hit. And what we think happened was since that polyurethane wheel has a lot less bounce and give than the big wheel, there's an intermediate jack shaft in the transmission that just immediately shattered. And so, I mean, the nice thing is in the future, we just beef up those components. It's perfectly fine. But for this, that was what happened. And so it wasn't even like there was something where it wasn't like it was something before the fight, all that. It got hit and it broke, right? So could have happened in any of the fights, but it just happened to happen there. So that was a little bit disappointing on their end, but Fred is an extremely experienced driver and has driven verts and horizontals in every weight class and knows how to win fights like that, which is kind of funny, right? Because you talked about the rule change. You haven't really seen many fights where it's just a crab walk fight with both weapons still at full rip, and Fred did a really, really, really good job of not losing the fight. That they had already won kind of more exchanges than they had lost, so we kind of knew that if it stayed that way, they would be good. But Fred did a really good job of trying to bait Hypershock out, trying to get them to overextend into a position where they would be more vulnerable, but in the end, not putting Rip in a position where it would get doinked either. So as unfortunately disappointing as the fight was, Fred did a really good job of
winning ugly.
Yeah, winning ugly, right? And so it was not the most exciting fight ever, but they got through it and moved on.
They do indeed. And
I'm still trying to figure out how Hypershock loses drive on their right-hand side. Because Rip hits
the chains
left.
fall out. You can see the chains on the floor.
Chain goes.
Yeah, but like, so the shock goes through the robot and breaks the chain on the other side that they didn't even hit.
Yeah, I think what I've heard through the grapevine is that their chains weren't as aligned as they needed to be. But that's just rumor. I haven't spoken to that. I haven't spoken to that firsthand. I'm not sure if that's totally accurate, but that would make sense in that, especially if the whole robot is in slow motion, you can watch these robots flex, right? Rip hits them, and if the whole robot flexes, it might flex in such a way that those two shafts, especially if
we talked about parallelogram shapes earlier.
Yeah, especially if it goes like this, right? Now all of a sudden there's no space left for the chain just breaks. So that certainly happens.
I would love in the future for BattleBots to introduce just one slow-mo camera in there somewhere, like hyper, so many frames per second, and it would just be wonderful.
We had the thermal this year, so it's not out of the realm.
No, it's not. It's not.
Get the slow-mo guys there with their phantoms. That'd be great.
Absolutely, it'd be good, wouldn't it? But it does mean Ripperoni moves on to the Field of Champions. I mean, what a fairy tale story for this robot.
It's absolutely the right robot to go through to join the likes of Free Shipping and
Shredded
Bro in things that I would not have picked to get into this stage, but absolutely deserve to be here.
Yeah.
I mean, what was your kind of reaction to the whole kind of season as a whole, really, Brandon? Because obviously you bought Starchild. Okay, it's a very novel concept. It's very different to what's out there. But Ripperoni, whilst having elements of, innovation, let's say, but how surprised were you that Ripperoni was as good as it was?
I mean, Rip down the stretch was a sprint, and a sprint of sprints down the stretch, as in the initial flywheels. I don't know if you've heard this story before, but the initial flywheel. So the cross section of the flywheel is a C shape, right? And so it comes back up in the middle, and there's a hub for the pulley and all that. But the cross section is a C shape. And the first time they spun it up, and it weighs, I think, like 15, 20-ish pounds, right? It's like a big pie dish. It's like a big heavy pie dish. And when they spun it up the first time, just under I think it was like to 50 or 75%, just under the centrifugal forces, because it's not hardened steel, the entire thing turned into like this and expanded under its own weight by like 3/8 of an inch radially. It is terrifying. So they're like, we can't run this because this is going to turn into a bomb in the box, because at one point the thing is just going to fail, and once one piece comes off, now it's unbalanced and the whole thing just grenades. So that was found out at the last minute, and they actually had to have new ones machined and shipped to Vegas to meet us at the event. And so everything really came together at a super late stage for Rip, and they did unbelievably well. So it's like, I was super happy for them. They did great. They won a bolt. It was really cool. But that was a scramble for them getting that robot together towards the end, but they did a great job of doing it. As for us, I mean, it was disappointing because ours was a little bit of the opposite, right? We were driving for weeks before ship day. We were running the weapon. I was practicing, doing all this stuff. And then when the actual filming happened, everything just went upside down. I got COVID the day we were supposed to, it wasn't like the day of, but it was like the day before we were supposed to fly out. And so spent 5 days that I couldn't be there. And the 6th day after, due to their protocols, and the 6th day after was the day of the overhaul fight. So I flew to Vegas, tested negative on set as per their protocols, and fought in the overhaul fight. And that prior week was just like one of the most stressful weeks of my life, because it's like all this stuff. I feel like I'm letting my team down. I'm not there with my team where I should be. I was brutal trying to figure all that stuff out, and we were having issues like our batteries that we had spec'd out were not what they were not giving the current they should have been, and were exploding. Fred had a battery explode in his hands in the pits that was fresh out of the box. We were dealing with all this really stressful stuff. It was brutal. And as far as the rest of the season went, obviously for Starchild, it didn't get much better on the winning front. So that was just really tough. And it has been really tough. And even watching, it's like, oh, cool, we're got the huge fight this week. Yay, we get to watch ourselves get mulched. And it's been really tough to see the robot just get absolutely dumped on social media and stuff like that. But I think we're in the end going to be better off for it. There's a lot of stuff that we've been able to learn from this season. And like I said, Rip had an unbelievable time. So, and that was with, at the beginning, like the producers, the initial thought was that Rip was like borderline to get in. They were accepted a week after Starchild was. So now they've solidified their place. So we have a lot more confidence in that going forward. So to bring it all together, it was definitely a really stressful, hard season. A lot of stuff that you don't see on TV that made it complex and challenging. But kind of now can put a bookend on it and move forward, and hopefully next season will be better and I don't get sick the week before the event.
It'd be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely. There's I don't, while you're talking, I'm also watching the very end of this fight, and I keep replaying this moment where you guys get announced as the winner, and then you see Fred jumping around, and something, I don't know if it's a pin or something, hops out of his lapel pocket, and he just leaps to catch it. The way that his body just moves just is making me smile. But yeah, you guys, and then you stoic in the background. I feel like it was a relief that that you got through that one, because that was definitely a fight where it was like bots on bungee cords. They just couldn't touch each other. It was like reverse tug of war. Yep. But yeah, I'm glad you guys you really did have your day in the sun. It really was a very it's one of the better rookie seasons we've ever seen from Rookie Bot. It really had everything. It had fights that were like this, and it had fights that were just pure chaos, win or lose, and that was the whole deal. And it was nice to have that kind of content. It's very nice to have bots that make you smile. I feel like it's just good fun, and it's effective. That's exactly what you need. So
100%. And thank you for bringing two really cool robots to BattleBots as well. You just, obviously it's not just yourself, it's the rest of the team as well. But
yeah,
thank you for bringing two exceptional and interesting designs. It's really cool to see.
It is our pleasure, of course, and we are very glad that people enjoy them. That's the big thing, is making stuff that people want to watch and enjoy watching. So we appreciate that for sure.
100%. Yeah. But that is that. We have our field for the finals.
Oh my!
So, Jevon, obviously you know who won. Brandon, you know who won. At the time, though, we'll go for predictions. Jevon, who did you think was going to win the Field of Champions at the end?
I don't think I was thinking at that point.
Steve,
if I were to look at the field and see who is there, we got to see who was fighting who at the end of this episode. So if I were to, if it were now and I haven't seen it or anything like that, my prediction would be Sawblaze.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve?
Looking, and I have the bracket up here now too. I feel like the way that this bracket was set up, we were headed toward a Sawblaze endgame final. I feel like that was very possible. There's definitely some options here that could be. I honestly could see. Man, that's just the best part about this too. Like any of these bots could go on a run and go all the way to the end. But I actually thought, going into this, I thought it was going to be like a Sawblaze, like a twofer, that they would have their giant nut and their golden bolt to screw together. I feel like that we were going to see.
Be quite the story.
That would be remarkable, and they'd have to do it on air
TV
so people can actually stop
Finally.
asking those questions. Even though I think what was it? I feel like Aaron did it.
He did, with different tantrums.
He did it during one of the post when they did the awards.
Hey, Brandon, you still had a horse in the race, so to speak. Did you think that Ripperoni could go all the way?
Did you guys know the draw, or did they, or was this more like, all right, who's up next? Did you know the future of what your fights were going to be had you kept winning?
I think I think with the bracket was out. I don't think they just gave us the 4 fights and went from there. I think that the bracket was completely out there. It was, but it was mostly just keeping, like I said earlier, keeping your opponent in front of you as your sole focus and going from there. Because we obviously wanted Rip to win as much as we could, but this was getting towards the end of the end. This was, I think all of this tournament happened on one day. I think maybe 1.5. But it was really, really tight down the stretch. And so we were definitely running out of parts on Rip, and it was getting to the end.
Yeah.
So
and at this point, it's very possible you'll have to go through 3 former champions. Think about this. You'd have to go through possibly Tantrum, Sawblaze, and Endgame, all in one go. That's a tall ask.
Path. It's the toughest path to the top, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
So for me, I kind of boil it down to who has fought the least.
Mm-hmm.
And given that they both went out fairly early on in the competition, I'd say that going into this Tantrum and Endgame are the 2 favourites.
The freshest, yeah.
Exactly. They've only done 5 fights and 6 fights respectively.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, given that Endgame tends to come out on top against Tantrum, and by that I mean they fought 3 times and won 3 times, I'm going to give it to Endgame. But we'll see. Who knows? Next week we'll have to try and find out who's securing the biggest dub of them all. But Brandon, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and your analysis and fight breakdowns are just top stuff. So thank you for your time as always, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Hopefully we'll see you in the UK again for an event.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope to see you guys soon. Yeah, it was a blast coming on. I always enjoy chatting with this stuff with you guys, so it's been fun. So yeah, hope to see you guys soon.
Absolutely. With that said, though, I have been Samuel64.
I've been Steve the American Killjoy.
I have been World of Woodrow.
And Brandon.
Oh, and I'm Brandon Zalinsky.
Yeah,
believe it or not.
There it is. There it is.
I didn't realize I was being cued.
It's fine.
It's okay.
Thank you very much for watching.
Of course.
The 3 of us will see you next week for the Golden Bolt tournament. We'll see you then.